Well, I'll tell you, Stu, I did battle some humongous waves. But, you know, just like I told the guy on ABC, danger is my business.
Sean Penn used to be the kind of man American guys in the 80s and 90s looked at with equal parts envy and irritation. He had Fast Times at Ridgemont High. He had a role people never forgot. He had Madonna. And then Sean Penn went and crushed all of it with his own hands. Jail time, marriages falling apart and abuse rumors, marriage after marriage and divorce after divorce. A classic Hollywood star life cycle. And Sean Penn was not the only one. The other faces from Fast Times at Ridgemont High had rough lives too. Some went straight to Oscar glory. Some lived through family tragedy, illness, divorce. So, by 2026, what do the people who made Ridgemont still have left? What have they lost? And how has time bent their lives out of shape? And do not go anywhere just yet. Stay all the way through this ride, because at the end of the video, I am holding back 5 really worthwhile facts about the film like a private handshake for the ones who stay with Ridgemont till the very end. Number 1, Sean Penn as Jeff Spicoli. When Fast Times at Ridgemont High came out, Sean Penn was only 22.
Confusing.
Nobody could have guessed that the kid who played Jeff Spicoli that year would go through jail time scandal, heartbreak war zones, and still refuse to step away from the spotlight. Penn was born in 1960 in Santa Monica, grew up in a show business family, but the thing that turned him into a memory for a whole generation was not that background. Amy Heckerling saw really early on that he had something hard to name, then let him bring his real-life surfer vibe straight into Spicoli, from the way he talked to the way he walked to those checkered vans. The result was that Spicoli did not feel like a character somebody wrote. He felt like a real American kid who had actually existed. What is impressive is that Sean Penn did not drown in that role. From the breakout of Fast Times, he went all the way into the ranks of the biggest actors in Hollywood with 3 acting Oscars by 2026. But if his career makes people respect him, his personal life is what made America talk about him nonstop. In 1987, Penn spent more than 30 days in jail for assaulting an extra on a film set. Then by 2010, after an incident with a paparazzo, he was sentenced to community service and anger management classes again. Then there is his personal life, where the story gets even messier. His marriage to Madonna left behind a scandalous shadow that hung over him for decades, but to be fair, Madonna herself swore under oath that Sean Penn never hit, tied up, or assaulted her, and that reports saying otherwise were false. After that came Robin Wright, a long marriage, kids, then a breakup full of drama before the two of them eventually rebuilt a friendship. Then finally Layla George, a short marriage that Penn admitted he had handled like a husband who was way too careless. In the middle of all those broken relationships came a heavy loss when his brother Chris Penn died in 2006 from an enlarged heart and the effects of multiple drugs. This year Sean Penn is 66 and he still refuses to grow old in any gentle way. In March 2026, he won an Oscar but was not sitting in a Hollywood auditorium. He got on a train to Kyiv and kept standing with Ukraine the way he has all through the war years. That is the Sean Penn of today, still talented, still stubborn, still choosing the road that makes people admire him and get tired of him at the same time. Sean, you have never been the kind of man who makes America feel comfortable for very long, but maybe that is exactly why people have not been able to look away from you for more than 40 years now. Number 2, Jennifer Jason Leigh as Stacy Hamilton. Jennifer Jason Leigh was only 20 when she played Stacy Hamilton, but not long after that, her real life started piling up tragedies heavier than anything Fast Times at Ridgemont High ever told. Leigh was born in 1962 in Los Angeles with the birth name Jennifer Lee Morrow. When the film came out in 1982, she was right at the age when a lot of actresses were still trying to find one cute role just to get noticed. Jennifer Jason Leigh was different. She prepared for Stacy by reading through her own high school diaries and letters, then worked at Perry's Pizza at Sherman Oaks Galleria for 3 weeks to get the exact rhythm of a teenage girl with a part-time job. After Fast Times, Jennifer Jason Leigh did not go down the polished commercial star route. She chose roles about unstable women, hard-to-like women, even women who almost seemed bent on self-destruction, and that choice made critics admire her more than the crowd remembered her. The biggest reward came late when she got an Oscar nomination in 2016 for The Hateful Eight. And that was not her last bright moment. This year, she is 64, still working, and in March 2026, she even joined Prime Video's new series, Bishop. Jennifer Jason Leigh does not live off Old Glory. She just keeps quietly moving forward through the work. But the thing that really gives Jennifer Jason Leigh weight sits outside the screen. Her father, actor Vic Morrow, died in the infamous helicopter accident on the set of Twilight Zone the movie in 1982, the same year Fast Times came out. What makes it sadder is that Leigh herself admitted the two of them were not close at all. Then there was her sister, Carrie Ann Morrow, who struggled with addiction before dying in 2016. That same year, her mother, screenwriter Barbara Turner, died at 79. In the middle of all that loss was her marriage to Noah Baumbach, which lasted from 2005 to 2013, gave them one son, then ended so quietly that later on, people even looked back at Marriage Story and saw a faint shadow of their real life in it. Some people tell their pain out loud. Jennifer Jason Leigh puts it on screen, then lets it sit there inside every role. Number 3, Judge Reinhold as Brad Hamilton. Brad Hamilton was the most decent guy at Ridgemont, but in real life, Judge Reinhold is the one who admitted he let his ego throw his whole career off course. Reinhold was born in 1957 with the full name Edward Ernest Reinhold Jr., and when Fast Times at Ridgemont High came out in 1982, he was 25. Brad was not the loudest character in the movie, but he was exactly the kind American men remembered for a long time, because he was the image of a young guy working a part-time job, getting his heart broken, losing work, getting humiliated, then still having to pull himself back up like he had no other option. What is interesting is that the role did not come easily to Reinhold either. Amy Heckerling already knew him, but she still had to set up a meeting carefully so the producers would not think she was playing favorites. Reinhold himself said that the very first time they met, producer Art Linson looked at him and said he looked older than he really was, which is enough to shake any young actor. But when the film came out, Brad Hamilton became one of the most memorable male anchors in Fast Times, and from there, Judge Reinhold moved fast into the group of familiar comedy faces from the 80s with Beverly Hills Cop Ruthless People, then later the Santa Claus, and the close talker role on Seinfeld. But the most important part of Judge Reinhold's story is that he did not keep that momentum the way people expected. He admitted himself that after a few movies lost steam, he let his ego go too far, treated people in the business badly, and later looked back at that stretch with a brutally honest line he had been an idiot. That is the kind of confession not everybody in Hollywood has the guts to make. Then, in 2016, Reinhold was arrested at Dallas Love Field Airport for misdemeanor disorderly conduct after an incident with TSA. The next day he came out and publicly apologized and said he was ashamed of how he behaved. What makes me respect Judge Reinhold is that he does not sit there pretending he never stumbled. He accepts that he had a strong run, made things harder on himself, then kept living the rest of his career with a clearer head. In 2024, he even came back as Billy Rosewood in Beverly Hills Cop Axel F., which was a really nice reminder that some faces from the 80s do not need to be loud to pull an audience back in. This year, Judge Reinhold is 69, and looking at him now, I see a very American kind of man. Somebody once promised a lot, somebody who partly wrecked it himself, but still had enough grit to stand on his own 2 feet. Number 4, Phoebe Cates as Linda Barrett. Some people get promised
Stacy,
a whole empire by Hollywood.
Stereo salesman.
Phoebe Cates was different. She had all of America at her feet. At 19, then became the one who walked away first. Cates was born in 1963 in New York, came into film after a stretch as a teen model. And when Fast Times at Ridgemont High came out in 1982, she was only 19. Linda Barrett was not the most psychologically heavy role in the movie, but she became the face burned deepest into pop culture memory. For a whole lot of American men from that era, Linda was not just a girl in a high school movie. She was a movie memory that stayed with them for decades. By 2020, that red swimsuit pool moment was even recreated by Jennifer Aniston during a table read of the film, which tells you just how big Phoebe Cates' cultural footprint really was. What matters is that Phoebe Cates was not the kind of star who flashed once and disappeared. After Fast Times, she kept going with Gremlins, 2 Drop Dead Fred, and Princess Caribou. In other words, she had the looks, the fame, and the luck to go much farther inside the Hollywood star machine. But that is exactly what makes her story worth talking about. Instead of clinging to the spotlight, Phoebe Cates basically stepped away from film after Princess Caribou in 1994, only coming back once in a memorable way with The Anniversary Party in 2001. She did not disappear because of scandal and not because her career collapsed. She just chose a different road. Phoebe Cates met Kevin Kline at an audition in the early 80s, married him in 1989, and the two of them built their life in New York instead of chasing the Los Angeles scene. Kline said flat out that the secret to their marriage was not having a Hollywood marriage, and they took turns working, so one parent would always be home with the kids. Cates was the one who stepped back from acting to focus on family. Since 2005, Phoebe Cates has run the Blue Tree Boutique on the Upper East Side and basically lived a whole different life. This year she is 63. She is still private still in New York, still keeping her distance from the spotlight, without ever looking like somebody who misses it. And maybe that is exactly what makes Phoebe Cates so different from a lot of 80s icons. Number 5, Vincent Schiavelli as Mr. Vargas. Mr. Vargas was not the kind of face Hollywood was built to turn into a leading man. He was the kind of actor who only had to step into the frame and the whole scene changed color. Vincent Schiavelli was born in 1948. In Brooklyn, grew up in a Sicilian-American family, studied acting at NYU. And when Fast Times at Ridgemont High came out in 1982, he was 34. Mr. Vargas was not the biggest role in the movie, but it was distinctive enough that he came back to play the same part in the Fast Times television series in 1986. What made Vincent Schiavelli truly special sat outside that role. From childhood, he lived with Marfan syndrome, a connective tissue disorder that can greatly affect both body shape and health. For a lot of people, that could have felt like a sentence handed down way too early. For Schiavelli, it was both a real hardship and the thing that helped shape his whole life. Hollywood saw an unusual face and often pushed him into weird, eerie, suspicious roles. But Schiavelli never let that turn him into a sideshow. He turned it into a craft. He moved through One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Amadeus Ghost Batman Returns. Tomorrow Never Dies then got called by Vanity Fair one of the finest character actors in America. His personal life followed a very particular path, too. He married actress Alice Beasley in 1985, had one son named Andrea, then divorced in 1988. In 1992, he married harpist Carol Mukalian and stayed with her for the rest of his life. But if you stop at marriage, you still have not gotten to the best part of Vincent Schiavelli. The best part is how later in life he kept going back more and more to his Sicilian roots. He wrote books, cooked, did food journalism about Sicily, and even won the James Beard Journalism Award in 2001. Near the end of his life, he returned to Polizzi Generosa, the village tied to his family, like after a whole life of playing strangers on screen, he wanted to bring himself back to the one place that felt most familiar. Vincent Schiavelli died on December 26, 2005, from lung cancer in Polizzi Generosa, Sicily, at the age of 57. Number 6, Robert Romanus as Mike Damone. Mike Damone is the kind of guy who only has to open his mouth a few times and you instantly know he thinks he is smarter than everybody else. Robert Romanus, the man who played him, lived almost the exact opposite way. He was born on July 17, 1956, is 69 this year, and when Fast Times at Ridgemont High came out in 1982, he was 26. Romanus grew up in West Hartford, and a big family had actor Richard Romanus as his older brother. And from the way he has talked about his life, music was there in that house from very early on. What is interesting about Robert Romanus is the role people remember him for is a loud-mouthed guy, but his real life never followed that flashy route. He broke through with Mike Damone, then kept showing up on television in the Facts of Life days of Our Lives fame and a bunch of other roles, but he never climbed into major stardom. He just quietly kept working, then slowly shifted toward a very different kind of life. The most interesting part of Robert Romanus' life is not scandal, but the way he lived after the spotlight dimmed. He was once married to actress and writer Kari Leeser, and they had 3 children. That breakup was very civilized. Romanus never turned his private life into a stage. He went through marriage, fatherhood, then later shifted a big part of his life into music and coffee shops. He opened Bob's Espresso Bar in North Hollywood, worked the counter himself, and turned it into a hangout for local artists, musicians, and actors. It sounds romantic, but real life was not that rosy. He admitted money was always tight to the point that sometimes he did not even have enough for very small things. That is the stretch of life I find most memorable about Robert Romanus, not some former star living off old memories, but an artist still struggling like everybody else. Then there is something sadder. At the end of 2023, his brother Richard Romanus died at 80, and Robert was the one who shared that news with The Hollywood Reporter. It shows that behind Mike Damone, behind the television years, the coffee shop, and the music there, is still just a man going through family loss and old age like everybody else. Today, Robert Romanus is still there, still connected to Papa's Kitchen, still showing up in nostalgic conversations about fast times.
Number 7. Brian Backer as Mark Ratner.
Mark Ratner is the most awkward, decent, and likable guy at Ridgemont High. Brian Backer, the man who played him, turned out to be one of the quietest faces in the whole cast once the movie had passed. Backer was born on December 5, 1956, in Brooklyn, New York. The year Fast Times at Ridgemont High came out, he was 26. But what a lot of people forget is that even before Ratner, Brian Backer came to Hollywood with an achievement not every young actor gets to have. In 1981, he won the Tony Award for Best Featured Actor in a play for Woody Allen's The Floating Light Bulb. So when he stepped into Fast Times, he was not some lucky newcomer. He was somebody serious theater had already recognized. After Fast Times, Brian Backer kept working pretty steadily for a while. He went through Moving Violations, the Money Pit Police Academy, 4 Citizens on Patrol, then a bunch of guest roles on television, and even a longer run on Santa Barbara. But what matters here is that the career never blew up the way people once expected. It thinned out, backed away, and after the 90s, he showed up less and less with Vamps in 2012, standing out as one late marker. With Brian Backer, the public side of his personal life is almost strangely private. Cast updates from People and EW, along with Playbill IMDb, and Tony Awards records mostly just mention theater screen credits and Ratner without any layer of scandal or major disgrace hanging over his name. In other words, Backer never turned his life into news. And maybe that is exactly why his story feels sad in such a Hollywood kind of way. You can arrive early, get praised, early even win a Tony right at the start, and still have no guarantee the road ahead will stay open forever. Number 8, Forest Whitaker as Charles Jefferson. Forest Whitaker only had a supporting role in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but his real life went farther than almost everybody else's. When the film came out in 1982, Whitaker was only 21 and played Charles Jefferson, Ridgemont's football star. That was his film debut, and looking back now, it feels like one of those really interesting Hollywood reminders sometimes the person who goes the farthest is not the one standing in the middle of the poster. Whitaker was born in 1961 in Longview, Texas, then grew up in California. He has talked about a childhood surrounded by gang violence in South Los Angeles, to the point that his family had to send him hours away to school just to avoid that environment. He got into college on a football scholarship, but a back injury cut that path off and pushed him from sports into music, then into acting. Whitaker has ptosis in his left eye, a trait inherited from his father, and Whitaker himself has said it can affect his vision. Then there was marriage. He met Keisha Nash on the set of Blown Away, married her in 1996, built a family with 4 children, then ended that marriage in 2018 after 22 years. Then in 2023, Keisha Nash died at 51. That is a sad detail, especially when you look back at how long they had walked through life together. As for his career, there is really no need to dance around it. Forest Whitaker went from a supporting role in Fast Times to the Oscar for Best Actor in The Last King of Scotland, then kept himself among the most respected actors in Hollywood for decades. But the thing that makes me admire him most is not the statue. It is the fact that he never let success turn him into somebody only interested in taking care of his own name. From UNESCO to the Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative, he has spent years doing reconciliation work, education, and support for young people in conflict zones. This year, Forrest Whitaker is 65, and he is still working steadily with the Emperor of Ocean Park and Godfather of Harlem.
Number 9. Scott Thomson as Arnold.
Scott Thomson is the kind of face people who love 80s movies recognize right away, even if not everybody gets the name right. In Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Thomson played Arnold, a character who did not own the spotlight the way Spicoli or Stacy Hamilton did, but still helped hold together that Ridgemont feeling audiences remember to this day. Scott Thomson was born in 1957. When the film came out in 1982, he was 25. Arnold was not the role that turned him into a big star, but it put him in exactly the place where a whole lot of American viewers started remembering his face. Then, just a few years later, Thomson pressed himself even deeper into pop culture memory as Chad Copeland in the Police Academy series. The most interesting part of Scott Thomson's life is how quiet it is. If you look at some of the other names in this cast, there is all kinds of stuff to talk about: jail time, divorce, scandal, family tragedy, huge crashes under the lights. With Scott Thomson, the public record is thin. There is no chain of major scandal tied to his name, no string of personal disasters that kept the press running after him. Number 10. D.W. Brown as Ron Johnson. Ron Johnson is the kind of man who feels more uncomfortable watching Fast Times at Ridgemont High today than he did back then. D.W. Brown, the man who played him, went in almost the opposite direction. He was born on June 30th, 1961, is 65 this year, and when Fast Times came out in 1982, he was only 21. Brown started acting at 15 in Tucson, then moved to Los Angeles, and in that same year, 1982, had work in both television and film. So Ron Johnson was not a role that came after everything was already set. It was one of the first doors he walked through. After that film, D.W. Brown kept working steadily with more roles in Weekend Past Mischief, The Twilight Zone, and years later, A Haunting in Connecticut. But if that is all you say, you still do not get to the best part of him. The best part is that Brown did not try to live forever as a face who once showed up in a classic movie. Starting in the mid-1990s, he shifted hard into writing and directing, made one clean move on the inside, co-wrote and co-produced Perfume, then slowly built a different place for himself in the business. D.W. Brown runs Barron Brown Studio with his wife, Joanne Barron, and public records describe them not just as husband and wife, but as longtime creative partners too. In a list full of cracked lives, that is a very different thing. Brown never turned his life into a chain of noisy headlines. He built it through marriage, through work, through a studio in Santa Monica, where he has taught Meisner-coached actors, directors, and writers through more than 40 years in the business. His official page and HB Studio both say he has done seminars or coaching with major names like Robin Wright, Leslie Mann, Halle Berry, Sean Penn, Anthony Hopkins, and Tom Hanks. To put it plainly, D.W. Brown did not build a legend through scandal. He built it by helping other people find the truth in acting. Brown also wrote You Can Act. You Can Act on Camera, and 2,500 Years of Wisdom. To me, that is the detail that makes this section the right way to close the list. Some people in Fast Times give us shock regret and jagged lives that feel very Hollywood. D.W. Brown gives us something else. He started with a role that made audiences uncomfortable, then aged into a teacher. This year he is 65, and looking back at him now, I feel like he is the right ending for this whole list. You would think by now you had already made the full circle from the most famous faces to the most private ones, and yet by the end, the movie still has a few little stories left that are good enough to make you stay a little longer. The first one is just so Nicolas Cage. Before he became Nicolas Cage, the guy all of Hollywood had to accept on his own terms, he started out by lying about his age. Back then, Cage wanted a bigger role, so he lied about how old he was, hoping he looked mature enough for the producers to believe it. Then they found out he was only 17. The second you hear that, you can already tell the reckless streak was there from the start, and honestly, it is kind of funny to think about. Fast Times was actually the first role Nicolas Cage ever got paid for. Not some glamorous debut, just a first paycheck in a teen movie, but who would have guessed that from there, Hollywood was about to get one of the strangest names in its whole history. And this is the kind of detail I always love in older movies. According to Brian Backer, when he flew in from Brooklyn to make the film, he was pretty broke. Jennifer Jason Leigh and her family let him stay with them for free until shooting was done. It is a small thing, but it makes the whole movie feel warmer. The Ray Walston detail is one older American audiences will immediately understand is something worth loving. Before Fast Times, he had spent way too long under the shadow of Uncle Martin from My Favorite Martian. Then, after this film, when kids out on the street started calling him Mr. Hand, Walston was actually grateful for it because at last, he had broken out of the old image. And then with Sean Penn, everything fits perfectly. During filming, he stayed in character so deeply that he almost only responded when people called him Spicoli. Even the door to his dressing room had Spicoli on it instead of Sean Penn. Maybe that is why Fast Times has lasted this long, not just because of the scenes, but because behind it there is always one more story that makes you want to come back and remember it one more time. I feel really lucky this movie and movies like this were once part of my childhood. Things are not the way they used to be anymore. 44 years have gone by. The faces on screen have gotten older. A lot of them have gone down very different roads. Some are still here, some have walked away from everything. But the interesting thing is that movies like Fast Times at Ridgemont High do not age in that same way. They just sit there, waiting to be played again, waiting to be named, waiting to be told again. And really the only way these movies keep living is not by waiting for Hollywood to remake them. It is by us still sitting here talking about them, remembering them, and telling them back to each other. If you grew up with movies like this too, do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Over here, we do not just revisit movies. We keep them alive together